Hello fellow quilters, I'm Linda Nitson with Sizzix, here to show you today the old Maids puzzle block, and that would be this right here. We have some Downton Abbey fabric from Andover that we're going to use today, some beautiful prints. And if you're familiar with the characters from Downton Abbey, this is the Edith collection. So hoping that eventually she gets married, and but we'll work on that later. So the block is comprised of two different units. It would be the 4.5-inch half square triangle block, and then it is comprised of this other block which has the 2.5-inch squares, and on the opposite corners it has the 2.5-inch half square triangles. So when we cut these out, we can sort of group them together, and I'll show you some advantages of doing that with the half square triangles. So we need 2 of the floral print and 2 of the blue for the background for the half square triangles. Let's do those first. So we need our 4.5-inch half square triangle die. We need a cutting pad on the bottom. And today I'm going to use the Sizzix Fabi machine. If you have a Big Shot machine, a Big Shot Pro, a Big Kick machine, any one of those will work. Place these right sides together. Now when you're cutting out half square triangles, when you're cutting out the fabrics that you want to use, cut them with the right sides together on top of the die. That way when you're completing the cut, you already have your finished pieces ready to sew together. So in this case, we're going to get 2 half square triangles on the same cut here, so we really only need 1 set of fabric. So I'm going to roll over the back side here. So we've got what we need for the front, and I'm just going to roll this to the back. And we'll place another cutting pad on the back, and we'll push this through. Let's get rid of that. Get those together. I'm going to keep them together because we will sew them in pairs when we get to that part. So we don't need the 4.5-inch half square triangle anymore. Let's put that one aside and get out the 2.5-inch half square triangle. And we need the blue and the mauve pink. So let's put that one together. So again, I just need 1 pass for 1 block. Now if you were going to make multiple blocks, of course, cut them all out at one time. Don't just cut 1 block at a time. A couple of quick turns, and we get our half square, 2.5-inch half square triangle pairs. Now I've got a thread that's catching here. Just give it a quick snip. Not a big deal. Don't pull on them. You'll end up with a run in your fabric. We don't need the 2.5-inch half square triangle anymore, but now we need to finish off this block here with the 2.5-inch squares. So we need a total of 4. We need 2 blocks. Quick whirl. Okay, now we have the 4 squares. So let's go ahead and arrange that. So we have a square in the corner and a square in the corner. We need to sew up these half square triangles though. So let's take these 2 stacks to our machine. Keep them in pairs as you cut them. They should already be right sides facing together. Using your 1/4 inch seam. Be careful not to be too big or too small. And also be mindful that you're sewing on the bias, so please don't stretch those as you sew. Just let your sewing machine feed them through, and you'll just feed one right in after the other. Now we're going to take them to the iron and press them, and we're going to press the seams open on the 4.5-inch half square triangles, and on the other units we're also going to press them open. Okay, so now that we have those pressed, we're going to go ahead and cut them apart. And this is why it didn't matter if you sewed them with either color on the top or the bottom. It doesn't really matter. And we're going to place them so that our floral print is facing inward in the block. And also are the little half square triangles in the corner facing into the block this way. If that little 4 patch here is its own block, it would be facing inward. Okay, so now we're going to take these together and sew these 4 so that it makes up a quadrant there. And the beauty of using the dies is when you use that scant 1/4 of an inch on these piecing dies, why your 2.5 inch half square triangle matches up perfectly to your 2.5 inch square. I don't even need pins to sew these together. No stretching, no puckering, just right the same size. If you are having trouble with your seams not matching up, your block pieces not matching up, double check your seam allowance. It might be a little too big or a little too small. Okay, so we have then our pieces connected by that chain stitch, which will help you in laying these out so you know where your pairs are. So you just flip them right sides together again. And in this case, we're going to roll the seams away from the half square triangle and towards the square. And if you feel more comfortable, you can place a pin in that intersection there, just to hold it steady. And don't sew over the pin. Take that out, matching up your corners. Sew all the way to the end, and then take the next one and just feed that in. Now, of course, if you're making more than one block, go through each of the stages and chain stitch those together. You don't have to start and stop with each block. Okay, so I've sewn and pressed the 4 patches together. Let me show you how we did that. So we want to place the seam for the half square triangle towards the square. And then once you get those sewn together, the seam down the middle will get pressed open. And that will help with the fullness in the seam when you lay it open. This part of it lays much flatter than if it were to go to one side. So now we're going to line up these 2, them right sides together as always. Put them into your sewing machine, your edges will all match. And final pressing, you're going to press the final seam open and these 2 seams towards the larger block. They will automatically want to go that direction. And I have this one already sewn up, so we want to press this one open and press the 4 patch block towards the half square triangle larger block. And that would be the completion of your Old Maids puzzle block. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Happy quilting!